everybody. This is day 1401. 1401 days since Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. The Army has now admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss, and we don't have his body. We don't have his body. So let's get right into it. I think it's very important for people to understand that the Army has admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. And, it's not like a billboard. They're not going to go get a billboard and say, oh, Richard Holiday was murdered on Fort Bliss. They're not going to do that, okay? Because they have an institution that they have to protect, and they spend loads of money protecting their institution and the character of I don't want to say the character, the reputation, the narrative. Let's just say that the narrative of their institution. They protect it. Okay. They don't think twice about destroying a young man's reputation. They will do it in order to protect their own reputation, their own narrative. Okay, their reputation is out there now. Okay, that's why the recruiting numbers are so low. And that's why I believe that they have been letting in the migrants in droves. And these are, for the most part, young men, military age men, that they will offer them some kind of deal and part of that deal is to serve in the military, and then we'll have a foreign military, which is not a good thing. And that's why I posted up, this is Memorial Day weekend, and I posted up the ceremony there at West Point. I believe it was West Point. The oath. And we are getting so much information because we've been putting out the cry, right? We've been putting out the cry, the call. We've been ringing the bell. We've been letting people know in El Paso that are sick and tired of being part of this criminal network to come forward, right? To come forward to share what they know. And, because, the writing is on the wall. We have enough. The Army now has admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. And this is very important for people to understand because the notice of death was an admission with all the paperwork that they filled in that said the place of death is Fort Bliss. That means the place of death is Fort Bliss. You have to read the paperwork, the legal paperwork. You have to learn how to understand what they're saying to you. And they have tried to push a different narrative, but the legal narrative which, is driving them because they have to follow the law. They're not above the law, right? Is that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. So the place of death is Fort Bliss. And Richard is dead, right? And there is no other option. There is no other option than that he was murdered. There's no other option. So they just admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss, okay? Because there's no other, even though they want to try to go to a different narrative, they absolutely can't. They absolutely can't. And that's why all the paperwork and the funds have to be followed. The insurance policies and casualty pay and all of that has to be followed because unless they pull a fast one or whatever, I don't know. Um, it, it's just when you see what's happening to President Trump and the weaponization of our institutions, of our Department of Justice, of our law enforcement community, um, in such an illegal way, that we all get it. We all get it. And Team Fine Richard Halliday really gets it because we're experiencing something very similar. Very similar. So, but it was a huge victory. And it was our emails. I think not just emails and letters, because a lot of times you can't send emails, you have to send letters. And we make sure they're all registered. We've overnighted so many of them. Um, and it was those communications, those constant communications, and providing lead after lead after lead, providing the evidence for the leads, evidence upon evidence upon evidence. Because you see, we have just been doing what they've asked us to do. They've asked us to give them everything, to provide them with everything. And so, my husband is a 30-year veteran, right? He went from E3, E4, E5, E6 to warrant officer, to captain, major, and of course, lieutenant colonel, and then he retired. 30 years of working very, very hard and obeying orders. And we were told by the CID, we were told by the general, we were told to provide information, to provide the leads. And that's what we've been doing. And not just to them, we've been covering our bases. And while we have been investigating, because Team Fine Richard Halliday, we're getting louder and louder. Because we're getting bigger and bigger, right? We're getting higher, we're getting taller, we're getting wider, we are absolutely everywhere around the world. We have this connection to South Korea, which is a huge ADA area, by the way, a huge military area. We have connections in Germany, which is a huge military area. We have connections in other places in Europe, and even in Russia, because my parents worked at the embassy there, the American embassy there, for 9 years in Moscow, Russia, right? And so with the State Department, you can't work 9 years for the State Department and not have connections that are, last your lifetime. Right. And so, we have connections in South Africa. So Team Fire Richard Halliday is getting sure-footed, because with all of this evidence over and over again, and it coming out in a more digestible, understanding, the pieces are all coming together where people are understanding it, then they get more vocal, because they're like, oh yeah, and this, and this. It triggers memories. It triggers different skills that people have experienced, and other people that they might know that they talk to. And so that is all snowballing, and it's coming together, and we're getting more and more information. And this is how we found out that Jules Chan and his brother, Jules Chuganan Chan, was the registered agent and manager for The Real Fit Fam El Paso. Okay. the intelligence doesn't just stop in Europe or whatever. It's also in the United States, and it's a lot of it because my dad was ADA. My dad was ADA. Of course, that's why Richard chose ADA. My dad worked with the missiles and the rockets there. I was born at White Sands. People have to understand, those are lifelong connections when you spend years and years in that area. Especially if you knew my dad, everybody that knew my dad would know, oh, yeah, Schnabel, if you went anywhere with my dad, you'd have to double or triple the time that you think that it would take you to do that mission, right? Because my dad was always stopped or would stop other people that he knew. My dad was just, and I miss him so much. My dad was just such a friendly, give the shirt off his back, um, you know, and I'll tell you, we have friends in Switzerland. Why we have friends in Switzerland? Because my dad was born in Portland, Oregon. And my mom and dad were up in that area in Washington. They were on a ferry, visiting people, a family up there in the Oregon, Washington area. And he heard some people speaking German, right? And he's like, but it's a Schweizerdeutsch, right? A Schweizerdeutsch, a Schweizerdeutsch, he would tell me. He heard somebody speaking German, but it wasn't the right, it was a very dialect German, and but not from Germany, right? So, of course, it was from Switzerland. It was a Swiss-German couple. And he started speaking with them, and they had a great time. And they were traveling. They had bought a van, and they were traveling the United States. And my dad said, "Look, we live in Texas. We live in Texas, and when you come through, and you're tired of staying in your van, look us up, and you can stay at our house." That was my dad. He had just met them. Um, so to make a long story short, a few weeks later, they were coming through Texas, and they looked at my mom and dad, and they were like, "Come on over." And they stayed with my parents for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yeah. And, you know, that has been a lifelong friendship. I remember I was pregnant with Hannah during that time. Yeah, because we ended up going to Epcot together in Florida. I mean, it's just a long story. It's just a beautiful story. Of course, we visited them in Switzerland, but that's my dad. My dad had so many friends, and when 9/11 happened, he went and put on his boots and volunteered and went to Afghanistan, Jordan. This is just who my family is, and so he worked with translators, which was a very difficult job because so many translators were killed. Um, it was a tough situation, but he has lifelong friends, and he is so missed. And he absolutely came to El Paso with us. He rallied for Richard with us, and he knew what was going on in El Paso, and he said, Richard, Richard knew things. Richard was telling him some things, um, and there was a huge problem with his unit. There was no esprit de corps. I've said that over and over again, that my dad kept stressing that there was no esprit de corps, that there was something really amiss, that Richard was a guidon bearer, and that Richard had learned things, and that he knew things. And so today, breaking news, and I want to get this statement right, that Richard knew the involvement of Fort Bliss. Um, Walmart mass shooting that led to Fort Bliss. And that retaliation, his retaliation was for that. So we know that it's about arms trafficking. This is a very nervous, it's a very, very nerve wracking when you give information, right? It's very, very nerve wracking. But my dad corroborates this. Well, let's just say our intelligence is giving us what is corroborating what my dad was already saying. Okay. And to be honest with you, um, when my dad was saying it, and he was even pointing to Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, alluding to, trying to be careful in this meeting. You don't want to just throw out allegations, but he absolutely threw out some lightweight allegations at Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, and in front of the general, right? And so my dad knew, just like we knew about the leaks. We knew about the leaks. We confronted a task force find Richard Halliday about the leaks. When our whistleblower came forward, the judicial whistleblower in his office, in his official office, to make the official whistleblower complaints to the many different agencies. That was not a surprise to us that Richard's file was being leaked and tampered with. We were telling okay, so that happened in 2022, January 2022. But we were telling CID and the general and get this, the task force find Richard Halliday with 15 plus agencies there, and a binational, because the Mexican agencies were there too. They were there, and we were telling them that something was stinky, that there were leaks, and we gave them evidence. I read it out during the meeting. I read it to them. I read the evidence, and it was a lot of it, that we had that proved that there were leaks, that they had someone on the inside of CID. And, so when the whistleblower came out and said, yeah, it's CID agent Tavita Nusa, leaking out to Leilani Hart, and then you're like, oh, wow, her son is Richard's platoon leader. So, all the pieces are coming together. And now we're getting that Richard knew, and I want to be very careful how I say this. I don't want to say he knew who was involved with the Walmart mass shooting that led to, exposing for people on Fort Bliss. I don't want to say that. I want to say that he knew things about the Walmart mass shooting that led to Fort Bliss. Okay, that led to Fort Bliss. And I can go on and say things that I don't want to say about the, Glendon Oakley Jr.'s report on the M4s in the hands of lots of them. Lots of the people dressed in black with M4s. And then we have other witnesses like this lady that I just put up that said they're dressed in black with M4s and, I don't think she said M4s, but with these guns, and they were shooting the guns, right? And there were more. It wasn't just Patrick Crucius, right? And we know that the narrative was fabricated, that the narrative was manipulate. These are a bunch of witches and warlocks, okay? And they, what witches and warlocks do, they twist things, they manipulate things, they try to work in stealth, right? They put on different identities. They put on identities and then they whoosh, show themselves, they're evil all at one time, or, whenever they're doing their evil stuff. And so they work in stealth. Um, they use these costumes or these false identities, and this is it. Just they're witches and warlocks, and they manipulate the narrative. They cast spells. They do all this stuff like hypnosis stuff, and and it sounds so crazy, but they tamper with evidence. Okay, let's do it legally. They tamper with evidence. They delete, they sanitize files from evidence that would indict them, right? Um, they they twist the narrative, um, and that is, uh, you know, um, I'm just thinking about Richard and how they just twisted him. They weaponized the system to use against him, giving, retaliating against him severely and continuously. And then when they murder him and they don't contact us, and then we come in and everything is in stealth, right? Stealth mode, and we don't know what's going on, and they've kicked us out, and we're like, "What? You've kicked us out? Why is everything in stealth mode? Why is everything shh, right? And why is this a quiet thing? This is a soldier, right?" And then as they found out that we would go to social media, then they started a smear campaign against Richard. And now how can they do that, especially on Memorial Day weekend? How can they smear Richard when Richard is a whistleblower, when the Army has admitted, and they know that the Army has admitted, because they know this case very, very well, that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss, right? Because the narrative is totally broken on any other part. Did he get in an accident? Did he walk away? No, Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. That is what they absolutely have admitted. And so, how can they continue to smear Richard when they know that he's a whistleblower, right? Because Boleyn told us he was a whistleblower, because the soldiers told us he was a whistleblower, that the IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday and others and others. Um, and we have it on record. We have it on record that they said that he was putting reports in, and and we have the generals saying, corroborating it, that there were audits, right? That there were audits, and you have to absolutely, have to comb through things, because they'll hide those details and all this wording and everything, and you have to comb through it. And so we're here to clarify that and to let you know that Team Find Richard Halliday is really big, because people are very, very sick of this. And I should even see if I'm on. I almost forgot to do that. Okay. See if I'm on. Oh, I see Danielle. Thank you, Danielle. They need to give Richard Halliday and family justice and give Richard Halliday's remains to the family. Absolutely. And we have, this is another thing that the public needs to know. The Army admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. They are now, they've sent us all the documents. We filled it out. We sent it back. The insurance pay, the casualty, all of those things. So, you know, uh, that's a huge admission that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. And then but the thing that people have to understand, because they're saying you need to have peace, you need to have peace. Um, we have evidence, and we've turned in evidence that they have Richard's remains, right? And we haven't gotten the communication back. Look at, they're not even, Major General Eisenhower still hasn't even come out with a statement yet. He hasn't even written us just to give us condolences yet. They are, you know, they are in cover up mode to. So we have the Secretary of the Army, we have major officials writing us condolences letter, but we don't have Major General Eisenhower right there in El Paso where Richard was murdered on his footprint. We don't, so that's very indicative of what is going on here, right? This absolute cover up and this denial. And I wouldn't say denial. I would say that they are protecting their brand. They are protecting their brand. And in order to protect their brand, they cannot communicate with us because the communication, what they have to tell us, is so damning, right? And if they lie to us, they're culpable, or they're, yeah, they are then liable. Then they are liable. And not communicating, they're liable too, but I guess it's the safest bet they have, the safest route. And we have then the evidence that they have Richard's remains. So how do you have peace when, like if we had no indication at all about these autopsy reports, about Nadal Baim, about the State Department. The State Department is telling us that they were looking for remains, and even Major General Sean Bernabe and the PAO. And you can even look all that up. You can look it up that that's what was going on at that time. So, if we didn't have all of that evidence, and knowing that they are doing something really dirty, and going, okay, well, we'll just ask the chief medical examiner for ourselves, and then we find out that the chief medical examiner is not even legally in this country, and then not even legally holding that position, and that Veronica Escobar was behind it with Joanne Bernal behind it. That's like, what? How can you have peace? How can you stop when you find something like that out, and then you go over to the DA's office and you hand them evidence? We've been told to investigate. We've been told to hand over all of the findings of our investigation. And so you go over to the DA's office and you want to give them, information. They refuse to communicate with you. And you're like, who is this guy? He's the DA. He's supposed to be communicating with us. And then you find out that he's a usurper. He's a usurper and a trespasser of the 34th Judicial District Attorney's office. You're like, what? He can't even fill out some paperwork during a recess appointment. I mean, the easiest kind of appointment you can get is, Government Abbott say, hey, come on, I'm going to make you a recess appointment. They don't even have to look at your lousy record, right? The Senate doesn't even have to look at your lousy record. You won't have to answer for the garbage that that you've created in your life. Sorry, it's he has not too good of a record, right? And it doesn't say much for Governor Abbott to appoint such a man, right? Why is Governor Abbott appointing such a man? Yeah, maybe because you're trying to protect the brand. Make sure you protect the brand. So we'll take someone that owes us a favor. And then Bill Hicks even admits that he is bribed, right? That's why he couldn't sign the anti bribery statement, the statement of officer. It's called the anti bribery statement, because it was a seemingly it was a bribe, and he admits it because he's saying, "Oh, yeah, I have to run as a Republican because if you're appointed as a Republican, you have to run as a Republican, and but that's not true unless you've been strong armed, right?" So, um, that article was really bad what he said, and it's not like he's just an average person. No, this is a district attorney that knows the law, that knows that he has to be careful about what he says and how he says it. He's not like me. I'm like, okay, can I say this? Can I say that? Because there's traps all around you, right? They're trying to put traps all around you so that they can stop you from uncovering the criminal network that you have to uncover. We, Team Find Richard Halliday, has to uncover in order to get Richard's remains, in order to get that notice of death, right? That was absolutely a huge victory for us, the notice of death. And that's a really sad thing to say because I always wanted our son to be alive, but we knew that was not the case, and it was confirmed. It was absolutely confirmed. And so, it's like very bitter, but at least we have the information, right? And so the other information that we have is that they have his remains. So here they they continuously and severely retaliate against him for being a whistleblower, and then they murder him, and then they take his body off of Fort Bliss and dismember it. The common thread in this is the mortuary affairs, right? The funeral home business, um, uh, and and so they dismember him and put his body in different parts, and then of course, we have the intelligence telling us that there were plea deals, that there was immunity deals, and part of those plea deals is, the location of Richard's body parts and getting those body parts, finding those body parts, um, and give us our son's body parts. That's where we're at right now because we know that they have them because that's the intelligence, and it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. And people say, well, we want proof, we want proof. Okay, this is how the courts work. The courts work by hard facts. That's what we really love, right? But it also works with irregularities and circumstantial evidence. Okay. And so with like Natalie Holloway's case is very important. There's been so many important cases that have taught us how to think legally in this case. And that is that you need just beyond a reasonable doubt. And so it's not all about hard evidence. It's about the irregularities, how they've responded, how they didn't respond, what they responded with, and it's kind of and of course circumstantial evidence, and that all points to um, a dual jurisdiction, probably a multi jurisdiction because of things happening in Mexico. Um, a so an international case um, of the death of a soldier that died on Fort Bliss, taken off, because that's what they admit to, right? And they want to keep it on Fort Bliss because of the plea deals, right? Because of the plea deals and the immunity, it only works for that federal jurisdiction. Once they took Richard off of Fort Bliss, that that destroyed any chance of that, because that became a Texas case then, a Texas capital case with the death penalty. Um, so that, that is probably some of those people that got the plea deals. They're very, very nervous. And that's why we called out, we did an open letter to those that we know, and they know who we are, and they know how to get in touch with us, and to, protect themselves from just the worst of the worst type of punishment, right? And maybe they'll get some leniency for coming forward and that, and helping us get our son's remains. So that's why we did that. Um, it is a little complicated sometimes, especially if you're only coming in piecemeal. But just know that there are reasons why we're not saying, okay, well, we've got the notice of death, and we're going to do a memorial, and we want to do a memorial, and we've been offered to do a memorial on Fort Bliss, but Fort Bliss is not secured. Okay. Um, and we have been harassed. We've been threatened. We were threatened yesterday. Um, we've been really, our security uh, as a family, we have to take that into consideration. And Major General Eisenhower needs to get the security on Fort Bliss under control. Because how can you have a memorial when you're going to put people in danger? And there is the criminal network is there, and you got a broken DA, you've got a usurper in the DA's office, and you've got an illegal in the chief medical examiner's office, and they're like, oh well, just come on for this memorial. No, I don't think so, because we want to, but first they need to get their ducks in a row, and they need to stop. We have a whistleblower right now in Team Find Richard Halliday, in Richard Halliday's case, that is still being retaliated against, still being harassed, right? Still being smeared, still that, they haven't got this under control yet. And so that is super important, because if they're going to do that to a murdered soldier's family and whistleblower, then what are they doing to other whistleblowers on Fort Bliss, right? With these breaches of security. So they cannot be trusted with our volunteer sons and daughters, right? They can't be trusted with people coming over the border that might want to, join the military for, to become an American citizen or something. They can't be even trusted with them. They're setting a trap for these people, and they're, going to send them into war to shed their blood. This is what I, that's the writing on the wall that I see. Because they allowed the shedding of Richard's blood on Fort Bliss with so many others, and allowed him to be smeared. And he was distinguished honor graduate for basic training in AIT for his cycle, and they never say it. They never say it. They don't want his memory. But this is Memorial Day weekend. We want his memory. And we want his memory properly. And this whole thing with the Real Fit Femme El Paso, I had a little segue in my mind just a few minutes ago that was just so great, with Jules A Tuganon Chan, um, you know, they're working stealth. Why don't they, it's kind of like Major General Eisenhower. Why don't they want to do the right thing? Um, and I'll tell you right now that Chan, he took down his LinkedIn. He took it down, and others too. Others took it down. And so, why didn't he want people to know that he was the registered agent and manager for the Real Fit Fam El Paso? That all that information is out there. And because we are so broad, because we're getting louder and louder, and because people are taking action now, we received the information that, hey, Jules Tuganon Chan is the Real Fit Femme El Paso who is not responding to you. Who's not responding to you? Oh, okay. And then we find out it's a major secret. Like that's really supposed to be anonymous. Well, why? Why is that supposed to be anonymous? Why does he want to operate in stealth? If that's something that witches and warlocks do. They want to hypnotize. They want to cast spells. They want to manipulate the narratives. They want you to think a certain way. They want you to see a certain thing. That's not reality. And they want to do this under disguise. And Jules Tuganon, um, you know, uh, breaking news, he says he worked the Walmart mass shooting. He worked it firsthand, firsthand. And while he was employed by the city of El Paso, and it's all about security and response and security response and everything like that. And he puts on the LinkedIn, and now he's taken it down, and so people can see for itself that he was advertising himself with his secret clearance. I didn't say. I didn't say it, just taking it out of the thin air that he was a security risk, that he was breaking security, that he was using his top secret clearance for his, from his day jobs to post these stories and everything like that on the Real Fit Fam El Paso for profit. I didn't just take it out of the air and make it up. I got it from Jules A. Tugawan Chan. I got it from him, from his LinkedIn. Because I was trying to get in touch with him to tell him that the story that he put up from Bob Moore at El Paso Matters was not the truth. Was not the truth. And I'm not saying that he's in the reserves just out of the thin air. He's in the reserves, and his brother's in the military, active duty. And so, I'm going to post up some of the things from his LinkedIn because, I saved it to read, to get in touch with him. And, um, I hope that he sides with the memory of all of our heroes. I hope he sides with them. This is Memorial Day weekend. I hope he sides with Team Find Richard Halliday. I really do. And I hope that he tells us what we need to know. He absolutely has the skills to do it. He absolutely has the clearances to do it. I hope he does the right thing. And this is for, of course, um, preserving Richard's dignity, but also every service member, that the system does properly work. And he's in the security business, right? He's in the security business. He's in the health business. He's in all. He's supposed to be caring. He was a commander in the army right there in El Paso. He knows someone in human resources because he just stays right there in El Paso. Um, and human resources, the people behind Fit Fam El Paso too. Um, human resources. Yeah. Um, let's see. Let's read everything. Your dad definitely knew that things weren't right. Absolutely, Danielle. He absolutely knew. And, but um, our minds can't accept sometimes the level of deception and the willingness to be deceptive that these witches and warlocks, and I don't know how else to say it, because all their actions is all about manipulating, about stealing identities, about being in disguise, disguising themselves, and being up to no good. And so, growing up, you watch Disney and everything, and that describes the witches and warlocks, right? That's what they are. They, are just like conniving and planning and, up to no good, and always trying to be in disguise and stealing identities and um, manipulating and telling lies. So this is, our mind doesn't go like, how could they live like that? And they do. They absolutely live like that, and they're thieves. They're absolutely thieves. So, you have done the complete and thorough investigation, and they mishandled all leads and chose not to follow up with the leads because they already knew. Yes, that's true. And they just chose to put Richard Halliday's family through hell and torture. Hell and torture. 100%. 100%. It was such hell. Can you imagine? Here, my dad is so sick. And we are being threatened and harassed with vile, the most vile. And the authorities will tell you that it's vile because we turned it in. Messages day in and day out. So much so that we had to figure out how to trace burner phones to stop it. And we did it. And the burner phones led to, Washington, D.C., Toronto, Canada, Santa Clara, California, Stanford University, right? Um, the FBI building in South Korea. Yeah. Um, it's not like I thought it would be El Paso, right? El Paso. No, this is, uh, yeah. Even though the ones that are culpable are absolutely in El Paso. So, but they're weaponizing the tools that they have, right? And that's why the show of institutional support they could not control because it went above them. And that was good news. This notice of death is good news because it means that there is a level of institutional support that's for us that is above them. So even though they had access to files, access to a lot of files, right? Access to tools, access to intelligence, right? Uh, Security tools and top secret clearances and things like this. Um, there's still a level of institutional support that's above them that was for us, and that is huge news, huge. And that's why the notice of death is so important, because the Army is admitting that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. Now, are they trying to control the narrative? Are they going to try to control, how this all gets out? They want to protect their brand, of course. Um, but, they still have to be, we still have to be on this day in and day out. Otherwise, they'll never give us Richard's body. Right? It just, the word needs to get out enough. And that's why your sharing is so important. And that's why we still have a group that wants to control the narrative, or stop the narrative, stop the spread of, our pleading to get Richard's remains, our pleading to get accountability for those that murdered Richard, that those that abused their power and weaponized the UCMJ, right? With the article, the Phil Grade Article 15, the permanent GOMAR, the chaptering, all those, the retaliation that he received by those that were wanting to harm him, um, that that used the tools that their jobs had given them, entrusted to them, and they abused their power. Absolutely. And this whole Walmart thing is absolutely connected with Richard. It's absolutely a political interference, a political witchery, right? They wanted to control the minds of El Pasoans, and it was a bloody crime, terrible, and these people need to be held accountable. And Richard was not about to stand by and let them just do things like that, right? Do things like they do to children, do things like they did to El Pasoans that just wanted to go into a Walmart. I just want to go in the Walmart and get some school supplies and stuff. And you have some people that are willing to murder people to control a political narrative, to control a political vote, be it for a bond issue, to make money, or be it for, the control of the agencies, the control of the offices for that area. Because if they don't control those offices, how are you going to traffic with impunity, right? How, people are going to say, hey, wait a minute, it's illegal to traffic, but if you have a broken DA, if you have a broken chief medical examiner, which is a judge, right? Which is a judge, and that took me a little bit to wrap my head around, but absolutely, he's a judge. Yeah, they can, if they have those people in their pocket, they can traffic. They don't have to worry. And of course, the FBI, Jesus Nieto, he's really key in all of this, because he's absolutely criminal. He absolutely needs to be arrested. And yeah, he's a big player in this. So they need to give you all the partial remains. Yeah, and we have word that they don't have all of Richard. Okay, there are a couple parts missing. Um, can you imagine getting that kind of intelligence information? It's hell. It's hell. And then, just by the grace of God, we can uh, strap on our full armor of God and do these live streams, right? So, and I'm, and I've been called all kinds of things, and you know, I just laugh because do you know the strength that God has exerted and demonstrated in me, through me, to do night after night after night of these live streams? Night after night after night. I mean, here we are. It's 1:11 here, a.m. My normal life before this all happened, I'm 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'm in bed. I'm in bed. Um, nope. God has exerted, He has blessed and exerted His strength through our family, because this is absolutely a family thing, this live streams. And the information is Team Find Richard Halliday. We have amazing researchers, amazing, and amazing thinkers. And to have the strength to do this, I think I'm stronger than Biden. I don't think Biden could do this. Could Biden come on every night and, sorry, that choked me up. Could Biden come on every night and rally for his children, rally for his country, rally for El Pasoans, um, rally for justice, and then point out all the evidence that they have found along the way, that really brings everybody into this. Every El Pasoan that is for El Paso, for justice in El Paso, is on Team Find Richard Halliday, right? Because they want what we want. Every service member that wants the service to honor their oaths, the oaths to defend the Constitution from foreign and domestic enemies, right? That whole oath was so beautiful. Every service member, they're on Team Find Richard Halliday. And the news is spreading, it's spreading, it's spreading. And it's the unseen. So you have the seen, all the evidence that we're handing in, I don't even think people understand how many letters we have given this information to, and continue to do that. And all the letters, all the emails, so that the word will spread enough, and there'll be so many Team Find Richard Halliday that that it will effectuate, that change will happen, right? That that you will really see justice having no other choice but to grind away exceedingly fine, right? That's what's going on here. And we just want to thank you so much. We want to thank every service member. We understand that you are supporting us. We understand that you are spreading the news. We understand that you have to do it in a certain way, because there are those in stealth watching, ready to retaliate, ready to do a cobra bite, right? So we understand that. So share this information however you can. And we understand that it's happening because we're getting results and we're getting information. And we got information about Jules A. Tuganon Chan, right? And, and he's just, he's got this great LinkedIn, and then he takes it down with others. Why? Why? That doesn't look good, Jules. It doesn't look good. You're ruining your whole career for this criminal network. That's what it looks like. And, and he's got some skills. So what's going on? That he would put all that at risk. His beautiful cars, he has this love for cars. His cars, his home, and, the home address for El Paso, for the FitFam El Paso, is not where he lives. Okay, I just want to let you know that he has a different address. Okay, and yeah, I don't know why. It's just, why would he risk all of that? You know, and it just corroborates that FitFam El Paso is that Dallas Hart is involved in it, that Ernest Christopher Grant is involved in it. And, so pray for Jules. Pray for Jules because he has some big decisions to make. He really does. And we just want to thank all of Team Find Richard Halliday for giving us that. We didn't even realize it was such a secret. And then once you look at all the media coverage, you're like, oh, wow, that was a secret. Wow, we did something really amazing for El Pasoans. And the El Pasoans did something amazing for the El Pasoans. And we want to thank you for that information. And there was another piece of information we got too. Oh, yeah, that, all about connecting Richard's case with the Walmart case. The first person to do that was Bob Moore of El Paso Matters. Okay? He did it. We would never have known about Danae Katzen being connected with the Walmart case if it wasn't for Bob Moore. He's the one that mentioned both Richard's case and the Walmart case, those suspects, in the same article. It was him. And I think that everyone needs to understand that. I didn't say it. He said it. He revealed it. He wrote it down. He published it after he spent time editing it. So, I think that is very, very important for people to spread around. And most important is that the Army, beyond a reasonable doubt, okay, in the terms of the legal system, with the hard evidence, with the circumstantial evidence, with the irregularities, the Army just admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. That's very important. That's really important. And why do they want to keep it on Fort Bliss? Because of jurisdiction. Why? Because they gave behind our back, we are told they gave plea deals, immunity, behind our back. And I think other things went on. And they want to keep it in one jurisdiction. And they just can't. There's too much evidence. We have enough. And that's what I've been saying for a long time. We have enough. We don't have it all. Nobody ever, what case has it all? You don't need it all. You just need enough. Enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And we have that. So thank you, everyone. If I have anything else, we're just really just trying to be as transparent as possible. That's why I even posted the news that we got from Jules that he was working for El Paso City while working the Walmart mass shooting firsthand. That's really, really concerning. Okay. Um, anyway, and we'll explain that um, coming up. So thank you so much. I will be back tomorrow, God willing, and have a well. It's already 1:21. Please copy. Uh, sorry, it's 1:21. Please comment. Please share. Please like. Thank you. Bye bye.